Coming up on 5 Minute News. Russia no longer has full control of the 4 annexed provinces. British Prime Minister forced into tax U-turn after market turmoil. And Trump sues CNN, claiming defamation for negative coverage. It's Tuesday, October 4. I'm Anthony Davis. The Ukrainian military scored more gains in their counter-offensive across at least 2 fronts on Monday, advancing in the very areas that Russia is trying to absorb and challenging Moscow's effort to engage fresh troops and its threats to defend incorporated areas by all means. In their latest breakthrough, Ukrainian forces penetrated Moscow's defences in the strategic southern Kherson region, one of the 4 areas in Ukraine that Russia is in the process of annexing. Kiev's troops also consolidated gains in the east and other major battlefields, re-establishing Ukrainian control just as Russian President Vladimir Putin is trying to overcome problems with manpower, weapons, troop morale and logistics, along with intensifying domestic and international criticism. Putin faces disarray and anger domestically about his partial troop mobilization and confusion about the establishment of new Russian borders. Ukraine's advances have become so apparent that even Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov, who usually focuses on his military's successes and the enemy's losses, was forced to acknowledge it. Ukraine has pressed its counter-offensive in the Kherson region since the summer, relentlessly pummeling Russian supply lines and making inroads into Russian-held areas. The Ukrainian military has used US-supplied HIMARS multiple rocket launchers to repeatedly hit the main bridge and a dam that served as a second crossing. It has also struck pontoon bridges that Russia has used to supply its troops. As the front line shifted, the political theatre in Moscow continued, with Russia's lower house of parliament rubber-stamping annexation treaties. This follows annexation referenda that the Kremlin orchestrated last week and that the UN chief and Western nations have said were illegal and fraudulent. British Prime Minister Liz Truss was forced on Monday into a humiliating U-turn after less than a month in power, reversing a cut to the highest rate of income tax that helped spark turmoil in financial markets and a rebellion in her party. Finance Minister Kwasi Kwarteng said the decision was taken with humility and contrition after some lawmakers from the ruling Conservative Party reacted with fury to the suggestions that public and welfare spending could be cut to fund tax cuts for the richest. Kwarteng will also bring forward publication of his plan to cut Britain's debt, alongside forecasts for economic growth, a government source said, in another apparent climb-down amid calls from some Conservatives that the action was needed quickly to reassure the markets. Addressing his party's annual conference, where lawmakers and supporters had gathered, Kwarteng acknowledged the little turbulence of the last week, but argued the government needed to press ahead with a new course to revive growth. Liz Truss, elected as Prime Minister by party members but not the broader public, is seeking to jolt the economy out of a decade of stagnant growth with a 1980s-style plan to cut taxes and regulation, all funded by vast government borrowing. Investors, used to Britain being a pillar of the global financial community, were aghast. The pound hit a record low against the dollar, and the Bank of England had to intervene to prevent pension funds from collapsing. Polls show the opposition Labour Party now holding commanding leads over the Conservatives. 2 surveys on Monday showed Labour with more than 50% of support from voters, with the Conservatives languishing some 25 to 30 points behind. Former US President Donald Trump sued CNN for defamation on Monday, seeking $475 million in punitive damages and claiming the network had carried out a campaign of libel and slander against him. Trump claims in his lawsuit filed in U.S. District Court in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, that CNN had used its considerable influence as a leading news organization to defeat him politically. Trump claims in the 29-page lawsuit that CNN had a long track record of criticizing him, but had ramped up its attacks in recent months because the network feared he would run again for president in 2024. The lawsuit lists several instances in which CNN appeared to compare Trump to Adolf Hitler, including a January 2022 special report that included footage of the German dictator. In a statement, the former president said he would be filing lawsuits against other major media companies in the coming weeks and months, and that he could even take action against the congressional committee probing the January 6 attack on the U.S. Capitol when Donald Trump attempted to overturn the U.S. election. The lawsuit comes as the 76-year-old former president faces considerable legal woes, including a criminal investigation by the U.S. Justice Department for retaining government records at his Mar-a-Lago estate after leaving office. Meanwhile, Mike Lindell, a prominent ally of former President Trump, must face a $1.3 billion lawsuit by Dominion Voting Systems, accusing him of defamation for pushing false claims that its voting machines rigged the 2020 election, with the U.S. Supreme Court on Monday turning away his appeal. You can subscribe to 5-Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5-Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate, and review online at 5minute.news. 5-Minute News is an Evergreen podcast covering politics, inequality, health, and climate, delivering independent, unbiased, and essential world news daily.